My mom tried to take my Mercedes for my sister on my wedding day, but my groom exposed her in front of everyone. Hey, everyone. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to tell you this story, and honestly, my hands are still shaking a little bit. What I'm about to share with you happened on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My wedding day. The day my mother tried to give away my car to my sister, and my husband exposed her in front of 180 guests. My name's Alexis, I'm 28 years old, and this story is about family, boundaries, and the moment I finally stood up for myself after a lifetime of being second place. Before we get into it, I want to say this isn't about being petty or seeking revenge. This is about what happens when you spend your entire life being the responsible one, the one who doesn't complain, the one who's expected to sacrifice everything while your sibling gets handed everything. And what happens when someone finally says enough is enough. So grab a coffee or whatever you need because this is going to be long. And it's going to be intense. But I think it needs to be told. Let me give you some background because none of this will make sense without understanding how I grew up. I have an older sister named Vanessa. She's 30 now, 2 years older than me. And for as long as I can remember, Vanessa has been my mother's entire world. I don't mean that in a sweet way. I mean Vanessa got everything, and I got whatever was left over. Growing up, Vanessa had the bigger bedroom. She got the later curfew. She got the designer prom dress while I wore whatever we could find on clearance at Target. When she wanted something, Mom found a way to make it happen. When I wanted something, I was told we couldn't afford it or that I was being selfish. Mom's excuse was always the same. Vanessa needs more support, Alexis. She's not as confident as you are. She needs extra encouragement. What she really meant was, you're smart and independent, so you don't need my attention or my money. You'll figure it out on your own. And I guess in a way, I did figure it out. I worked hard in school, got straight A's, earned scholarships, put myself through college and then law school, working 2 jobs the entire time just to make ends meet. I graduated with honors while waitressing nights and weekends. I never asked my mom for money after I turned 18 because I knew it would either come with massive strings attached, or it would somehow end up going to Vanessa instead. Vanessa, on the other hand, dropped out of college. Twice. She's now 30 years old, still living at home with Mom, rent-free. She works part-time at a boutique, maybe 15 hours a week if that. Mom pays her phone bill, her car insurance, and regularly covers her credit card debt when she overspends on designer handbags and expensive brunches with friends. When I got accepted into law school, Mom took me to Applebee's for dinner. Just the 2 of us. No celebration, no fanfare. Just a quiet dinner where she spent most of the time talking about how worried she was about Vanessa's future. When Vanessa finished a 5-week online social media marketing course, Mom threw her a party. With catering. I'm not exaggerating. Actual professional catering for completing an online course that anyone could finish in their spare time. That's the kind of household I grew up in. And for years, I just accepted it. I told myself that's just how families work. Some kids need more help than others. I was the capable one, the strong one, so I didn't need as much. I convinced myself it was fine. But it wasn't fine. It hurt. Every single time. My dad was the only one who ever saw it clearly. He'd argue with Mom about the favoritism, telling her she was setting both of us up for serious problems. He'd tell her that ignoring me wasn't going to make me stronger, it was just going to make me resentful. But when I was 18, my dad died from cancer. And with him went the only person in that house who ever stood up for me. After Dad died, the favoritism got even worse. Without him there to push back, Mom just did whatever she wanted. And what she wanted was to make sure Vanessa had everything while I continued to fend for myself. I spent my entire childhood and young adulthood being second best. Being the afterthought. Being the child who didn't matter as much. And I carried that pain with me everywhere I went. Fast forward to 3 years ago. I met Ethan at a charity event. I was there representing the nonprofit legal clinic where I worked, and he was on the organizing committee. He was attractive, charming, easy to talk to. But what really drew me to him was how he listened. Really listened. Like what I had to say actually mattered. We started dating, and pretty quickly I learned that Ethan came from money. Not flashy, showing off money. Old money. Generational wealth. His family owns a substantial amount of commercial real estate in our city. They're not celebrities or anything like that, but they're definitely well-established and comfortable. At first, that made me nervous. I was worried his family would look down on me, that they'd see me as some girl from a modest background trying to marry into wealth. But Ethan's family was nothing like what I expected. His mother, Patricia, welcomed me with open arms from day one. His father, Richard, was quiet but incredibly kind. His sister, Lauren, became one of my closest friends. They never once made me feel like I wasn't good enough or didn't belong. If anything, they seemed genuinely thrilled that Ethan had found someone who made him happy. About 2 years into our relationship, Ethan proposed. It was perfect. Just the two of us on a weekend getaway to the mountains. No big production, no cameras, just him and me. I said yes before he even finished asking. We started planning the wedding, and that's when things got complicated with my family. My mom wanted to control every aspect of the wedding. She had all these ideas about making it this huge, flashy spectacle. But Patricia, Ethan's mom, gracefully kept stepping in and steering things towards something more elegant and tasteful. Mom was clearly irritated that she couldn't take over, but Patricia handled it beautifully. 4 months before the wedding, Ethan's parents gave us an incredibly generous gift. A brand new Mercedes GLE 500. Fully loaded with every feature you could imagine. The car was registered in my name. My name on the title, not Ethan's. They presented it to us at a family dinner with a toast about how happy they were to welcome me into their family. I cried. I'd never owned a new car in my entire life. I'd been driving a 15-year-old Honda Civic that broke down constantly and smelled like old French fries no matter how many times I cleaned it. This Mercedes wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. It represented being valued, being seen as worthy of nice things, being welcomed into a family that actually wanted me. The car was being kept at Ethan's parents' house since we were still living in separate apartments until after the wedding. The plan was that after the honeymoon, I'd start driving it. When I told my mom about the gift, her reaction should have been my first warning sign. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't express happiness for me. Instead, she got this look on her face and said, "Well, that's quite generous. I guess there are benefits to marrying into money, aren't there?" The comment stung, like she was implying I was marrying Ethan for his family's wealth instead of because I loved him. But I brushed it off because that was Mom. She could never just be happy for me without adding some little dig. The week leading up to the wedding was absolute chaos in the best way. Final dress fittings, confirming all the vendor details, managing the guest list, running through the timeline over and over. Ethan's family had insisted on paying for the wedding, which was incredibly generous, but also clearly bothered my mother. She kept trying to insert herself into decisions, but Patricia politely but firmly kept the planning on track. The rehearsal dinner was held the night before the wedding at this gorgeous restaurant. Everything went smoothly. The food was amazing, everyone was laughing and having a good time. But I noticed something that made me uneasy. Throughout dinner, my mom kept pulling Vanessa aside for these intense, whispered conversations. They'd huddle in the corner, Mom talking rapidly with this urgent look on her face, casting glances in my direction. It happened 4 or 5 times during the meal. Each time, Vanessa would nod along, and then they'd come back to the table acting like nothing had happened. It made me nervous. I knew that look on Mom's face. She was planning something. But I tried to push the worry out of my mind. Tomorrow was my wedding day. I didn't want to assume the worst. I just wanted to enjoy this time with the people I loved. After the rehearsal dinner ended, I drove back to my hotel room. I should have been floating on air, excited about the next day. But something about those whispered conversations bothered me. I tried calling my best friend Maya to talk it through, but she'd already gone to sleep. So I just tried to push it out of my mind and focus on the fact that tomorrow I was marrying my best friend. The morning of my wedding was absolutely beautiful. Perfect weather, clear blue skies, not a cloud in sight. I woke up feeling nervous, but excited. This was it. The day I'd been dreaming about. My bridesmaids came to the bridal suite to help me get ready. We were laughing, drinking mimosas, taking pictures. The energy was perfect. I was stepping into my wedding dress, this gorgeous custom Vera Wong gown that Ethan had surprised me with, when there was a knock on the door. My mother walked in. She was wearing a dress that was way too close to white for comfort, practically cream-colored. I'd already fought that battle weeks ago and lost, so I didn't say anything about it this time. "Alexis, sweetheart, you look absolutely stunning," she said. Her smile looked forced, tight around the edges. "I need to talk to you about something important before the ceremony." My stomach immediately dropped. Nothing good has ever started with those words. "Can it wait until after?" I asked, trying to fasten my veil with shaking hands. "We're almost ready to start, and I don't want to be late." "It really can't wait," Mom said, sitting down on the velvet sofa like she had all the time in the world. "It's about the Mercedes." My hands froze. "What about the Mercedes?" She smoothed her dress, looking almost casual about it. "Well, Vanessa's car completely died last week. The transmission is shot, and it would cost more to fix than the car is actually worth. She needs reliable transportation for job interviews." I stared at her, waiting for her to get to the point. "Okay, and what does that have to do with my wedding gift?" Mom's laugh was light, rehearsed, like she'd practiced this conversation. "Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. Ethan's family has plenty of money. They can get you another car whenever you want. But Vanessa really needs one right now, and that Mercedes is just sitting there unused in the garage. It makes sense to give it to her." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. I actually thought maybe I was having some kind of stress-induced hallucination. "Mom, that car was a wedding gift to me from Ethan's parents. It has my name on the title." "Exactly," she said like I was proving her point. "Your name, not Ethan's. Which means you can do whatever you want with it. And the generous, family-oriented thing to do would be to help your sister when she's struggling." She stood up and walked toward the mirror, adjusting her hair. "We're giving the car to Vanessa. I already talked to her about it, and she's thrilled. She's even planning to use it to drive to job interviews starting next week." My vision started to blur around the edges. "You discussed giving away my car without even talking to me first? Alexis, don't make this into something it's not," Mom said, her tone getting sharp. "You're marrying into wealth. You'll have everything you could ever possibly want. Vanessa is struggling. This is what family does. We help each other." She walked toward the door. "Besides, it's already decided. Vanessa is going to pick up the car from the Hayes estate tomorrow morning at 10. I called Patricia yesterday, and she was very understanding about the family situation." My heart stopped. "You called Ethan's mother and told her you're giving away the car she gave me?" I explained the circumstances, Mom said defensively. She understood. She said she'd talk to Ethan about it. She checked her watch. "We should get you lined up for the ceremony. It starts in 30 minutes. And then she just walked out. Left me standing there in my wedding dress, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. My perfect day was unraveling before it had even started. I was still standing there in shock when Vanessa walked into the bridal suite wearing her bridesmaid dress. She looked completely oblivious to the bomb Mom had just dropped. "Hey, bride," she said cheerfully. "Oh my God, I'm so excited about the Mercedes. Mom told me I could have it since you're going to be rich now anyway and won't need it." Something inside me cracked. Years of being second place, years of watching Vanessa get everything while I got nothing, years of being told I was selfish for wanting anything for myself. All of it came bubbling up. "Vanessa, that car was a gift from Ethan's parents to me for our wedding," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged and examined her manicure, like we were discussing the weather. "Yeah, but like you don't even need it. Ethan probably makes more in a month than I'll see in a year. Why are you being so weird about this?" "Weird," I repeated. "That car is my property." "Oh my God, relax," she said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "It's just a car. Besides, Mom already arranged everything with Ethan's parents. I'm picking it up tomorrow at 10. Maya, my maid of honor, had walked in during this conversation. Her face went from confused to absolutely furious in about 3 seconds. "I'm sorry, what?" Maya said, her voice dangerously quiet. Alexis is being dramatic, Vanessa said casually. Mom just asked if I could have the Mercedes since I need a car, and Alexis is marrying into money. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I felt my voice rising. That car is mine. It was a gift to me. Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. Whatever. Mom already worked it out. You're making this into way more than it needs to be. Maya looked at me, her expression a mix of shock and rage. Please tell me this is some kind of joke. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. My mom just told me what happened. Don't worry. Stay calm. I'm handling it. The ceremony started at 4 in the afternoon in the Hayes Estate Gardens. It was absolutely breathtaking. 180 guests seated in perfect rows of white chairs. Thousands of white flowers everywhere. String lights hanging from the trees. It looked like something out of a fairy tale. Ethan stood at the altar looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine, surrounded by his groomsmen. I walked down the aisle on my uncle's arm since my father wasn't there to do it. The whole time, I was trying to focus on Ethan's face instead of my mother's satisfied smile in the front row. Or Vanessa sitting there like she'd already won some kind of victory. We exchanged our vows. When Ethan promised to love and cherish me, his voice was strong and clear. When it was my turn, I had to blink back tears that had nothing to do with joy and everything to do with hurt and anger I was trying desperately to suppress. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife. Ethan kissed me. Everyone applauded. For just a moment, I let myself forget about the car situation and focus on the fact that I'd married my best friend. The reception was held in this massive white tent decorated with thousands of flowers and twinkling lights everywhere. Dinner was served, toasts were made, and I went through all the motions of being a happy bride, even though my mind was racing with anxiety about what was going to happen next. Ethan kept squeezing my hand under the table, but he seemed strangely calm considering what had happened that morning. I knew my husband well enough to know that when he got quiet like this, it meant he was planning something. But I had no idea what. After our first dance, Ethan and I started making the rounds to greet our guests and thank them for coming. That's when my mother cornered me at the dessert table with Vanessa trailing right behind her. Alexis, darling, you look absolutely radiant, Mom said, reaching out to touch my cheek. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Are we really doing this right now? I said quietly, trying not to make a scene. Pretending everything's fine? Doing what? Mom looked around at the elegant decorations, the designer gowns, the expensive champagne flowing freely. I'm just congratulating my daughter on her wedding day. You've certainly done well for yourself. The Hayes family really knows how to throw a spectacular event. Vanessa giggled, clearly tipsy from the open bar. Seriously, Alexis, this whole thing probably cost like $500,000. And you were worried about one car. Several nearby guests turned to look at us. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment. That's when Ethan appeared at my side, his hand resting firmly on the small of my back. Mrs. Thompson, Vanessa, are you both enjoying the reception? His voice was pleasant, polite even. But I'd been with him long enough to hear the steel underneath. Oh, it's absolutely lovely, Ethan, Mom said. Your family has been so generous with everything. Which actually reminds me, I wanted to thank Patricia again for being so understanding about the Mercedes situation with Vanessa. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Yes, my mother mentioned your phone call. She explained that you asked us to sign over Alexis's wedding gift to Vanessa because it would be the family-oriented thing to do. Exactly, Mom said, seeming to miss the tension completely. I'm so glad Patricia understands how important family is. And Vanessa, Ethan turned to my sister. You mentioned at the rehearsal dinner last night that you work about 15 hours a week at a boutique. Is that correct? Vanessa blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question.
Yeah.
Why does that matter? Just curious, Ethan said casually. And your rent, phone bill, car insurance, those are all paid by your mother, correct? It's a family plan, Vanessa said defensively. What does this have to do with anything? And your credit card debt that your mother regularly pays off for you? Vanessa's face started turning red. Mom helps me out sometimes when I'm short on money. So what? That's what moms do. The conversations around us had completely stopped now. People were openly staring at our little group. I could see Ethan's parents, his sister Lauren, and several other family members moving closer to listen. Ethan's voice remained calm but grew louder, making sure everyone nearby could hear clearly. So, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're 30 years old. You work part-time, approximately 15 hours per week. According to what you told me last night, your mother pays for your housing, your phone, your insurance, and regularly covers your credit card debt when you overspend. And you think Alexis, who put herself through college working 2 jobs, who graduated from law school with honors while waitressing nights and weekends, who has never asked her mother for a single dollar since she turned 18, you think she's the selfish one for wanting to keep her own wedding gift. The silence was absolutely deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that massive tent. Mom's face had gone from flushed to completely pale. Ethan, I don't think you understand, Dash. No, Mrs. Thompson. Ethan cut her off. I understand perfectly. Let me tell you something Alexis hasn't told you. Because she's too kind and too considerate to throw it in your face. His hand stayed on my back, steady and reassuring. I could feel my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could probably see it. When Alexis was applying to law schools, Ethan continued, she got accepted to Harvard. Full scholarship. Complete ride. Do you know why she turned it down? I felt my breath catch. I hadn't told Ethan this explicitly, but he must have pieced it together from conversations we'd had over the years. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She turned it down because you called her crying, Ethan said, his voice carrying across the now silent tent. You told her you couldn't handle Vanessa's depression if Alexis moved to Boston. You said Vanessa needed her big sister close by for emotional support. So Alexis gave up her dream school and went to State University instead. She commuted from an apartment she could barely afford instead of living on campus. She came home every single weekend to be there for Vanessa. I could see several guests pulling out their phones, probably recording this. Part of me wanted to stop Ethan, to prevent this from becoming a public spectacle. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced for so long, wanted everyone to finally know the truth. And do you know what Vanessa was doing during those weekends? Ethan looked directly at my sister. Dating some guy named Tyler. Going to parties. Living her life. She wasn't depressed. She wasn't struggling. She was fine. But you knew if you played the mental health card, Alexis would fold. Because that's what Alexis does. She puts everyone else first, even when it costs her everything. How dare you? Mom finally found her voice. You have no idea what our family has been through. I know exactly what your family has been through, Ethan said, his voice rising slightly for the first time. Because I've spent 2 years watching it happen. I watched you guilt Alexis into missing our 6-month anniversary dinner because Vanessa had a bad date. I've watched you expect Alexis to pay Vanessa's share of your birthday dinner bill because Vanessa was going through something. I've watched you ask Alexis to postpone our engagement photos by a week because they were too close to Vanessa's birthday and you didn't want her to feel overshadowed. Every example felt like a punch to the gut. These were private moments, small sacrifices I'd made to keep the peace. Hearing them laid out in front of 180 people made the pattern impossible to ignore. Family makes sacrifices, Mom said weakly. No, Mrs. Thompson. Ethan's voice was sharp. Alexis makes sacrifices. Vanessa makes demands. There's a huge difference. That's when Patricia stepped forward. She'd been standing quietly nearby, but now she moved into the circle with the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. Mrs. Thompson, Patricia said, her voice like ice. When you called me yesterday, you told me that Alexis had always been materialistic and selfish with possessions. You said this was an opportunity for her to learn about generosity and putting family first. You asked me, as her new mother-in-law, to help teach her these values. The crowd gasped audibly. Several people were looking at my mother with open disgust. What you didn't know, Patricia continued, is that Alexis told me 2 weeks ago about a scholarship fund she's been quietly funding at her old high school. $1,200 a month, every single month for the past year. The money goes to students from low-income families who want to pursue law degrees. She specifically requested complete anonymity because she didn't want any recognition or praise. Tears were streaming down my face now, ruining my makeup. I'd forgotten I'd even mentioned that to Patricia during one of our shopping trips. So, when you called me yesterday to lecture me about teaching my daughter-in-law about generosity, Patricia's voice could have cut through steel. It felt remarkably offensive coming from someone who taught one daughter to constantly give while teaching the other daughter to constantly take. Richard, Ethan's father, who rarely spoke but commanded respect when he did, stepped forward next. "I built my business from absolutely nothing," he said quietly. "I understand what it means to work hard and earn what you have. What I will never understand is watching your child succeed and feeling entitled to the rewards of that success simply because you're related to them." He looked directly at Vanessa. "You're right, young lady. We gave Alexis that car as a gift. Do you know why people give gifts? Because we care about someone and want them to have something nice. Not because we expect that gift to be redistributed to their family members like some kind of community property. If we wanted to give you a car, we would have given you a car directly." "But that's not fair," Vanessa said, tears starting to run down her face. "Life isn't fair." Lauren, Ethan's sister, stepped forward. "I'm Ethan's sister, and I got a car when I got married too. You know what my sister-in-law didn't do? Show up at my wedding and demand I hand it over to her unemployed brother. Because that would be absolutely insane. What you and your mother are doing is insane." That's when my cousin Jessica, who I hadn't been close with in years, stepped out of the crowd and addressed my mother directly. "Aunt Caroline, I need to say something," Jessica said, her voice shaking slightly. "When I got engaged last year, you called my mother and told her it was unfortunate that I was getting married before Vanessa because it would make Vanessa feel bad about still being single. You actually suggested that I postpone my wedding by 6 months so Vanessa wouldn't feel uncomfortable at family gatherings." Mom's eyes went wide. "Jessica, that was a private conversation, Dash. It was a ridiculous request." Jessica cut her off. "And my mother, your own sister, told you no. She told you that you'd created a monster in Vanessa by never letting her experience disappointment or consequences. She told you that you were destroying your relationship with Alexis by treating her like a support system instead of a daughter." Other relatives were nodding now. My Aunt Sharon, Mom's other sister, looked like she wanted to say something but stayed quiet. Jessica's voice cracked with emotion. "We've all watched this happen for years. We've all stayed quiet because we didn't want to cause family drama. But this? What you're doing to Alexis on her wedding day? This is too far. You caused this. All of this is because of how you've treated your own daughters." Maya stepped up beside me, putting her arm protectively around my shoulders. "I've known Alexis since freshman year of college. I've watched your mother treat you like you were less important than Vanessa for over a decade. Today was the day you finally stood up for yourself, and I'm so proud of you." Ethan looked back at Mom and Vanessa. "You're right that we could buy 10 Mercedes without noticing the expense. But here's the thing, we shouldn't have to. And more importantly, my wife shouldn't have to justify keeping her own property just because you think her success should be redistributed to family members who haven't earned it. This isn't about a car." I finally spoke, my voice shaking but clear. "This is about respect. You didn't ask me about the car, Mom. You demanded it. You called my in-laws behind my back and tried to manipulate them. You told Vanessa she could pick it up tomorrow like it was already decided. On my wedding day. You did all of this on my wedding day." Years of suppressed anger and hurt were pouring out now. My voice got stronger, louder. "When I graduated high school with honors, you skipped the ceremony because Vanessa had a bad date. When I got accepted into law school, you told me not to make a big deal about it because Vanessa was feeling insecure about dropping out of college. When I got engaged, you asked me to postpone announcing it because it was too close to Vanessa's birthday. And now, on my wedding day, you're trying to take away a gift from my husband's family because Vanessa needs another bailout." Tears were streaming down my face, completely destroying my makeup, but I didn't care anymore. I have spent my entire life being second to Vanessa, making myself smaller so she could feel bigger, apologizing for succeeding, feeling guilty about having nice things, sacrificing my own dreams and happiness to make things easier for her. But I'm done, Mom. I'm completely done. I'm done being treated like my accomplishments, my feelings, and my property are just community resources to be distributed however you see fit. Mom looked around at the assembled crowd, her face a mixture of humiliation and rage. I cannot believe you're doing this in front of all these people. I'm your mother. You tried to steal my wedding gift in front of all these people. I shot back. I think they deserve to know exactly who you are and what you've been doing to me for my entire life. Ethan's hand tightened around my waist. The car stays in Alexis's name. This discussion is over. If you'd like to stay and enjoy the rest of the reception, you're welcome to do so. But if you're going to keep pushing this issue, I'll have security escort you out. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She'd clearly expected Ethan to be more accommodating, to want to keep the peace and avoid making a scene. She'd completely miscalculated. You would actually kick your own mother-in-law out of your wedding reception? She asked, looking genuinely shocked. I would remove anyone who's trying to ruin my wife's wedding day, Ethan stated firmly. Family or not. Mom grabbed Vanessa's arm. Come on. We don't have to stay here and be insulted like this. They started to walk away, but Ethan's voice stopped them. Oh, and Mrs. Thompson? One more thing. Mom turned back, and for a split second, there was hope on her face that maybe he was going to back down. If you ever try to manipulate my family again, or if you ever try to guilt my wife into giving you anything else, I will personally make sure that everyone in your social circle knows exactly what you did here today. My family has connections in every major business and social organization in this city. You might want to think very carefully about that before you try anything like this again. It was a calculated threat delivered with perfect precision. Mom's face went completely white as she realized what he was saying. With just a few phone calls from the Hayes family, she could lose her country club membership, her social standing, everything she'd worked to build. She turned and walked away without another word, practically dragging Vanessa behind her. The tent stayed completely silent for another long moment. Then Ethan's grandmother, who was 93 years old and had been sitting quietly through the entire confrontation, started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined in until the entire tent was applauding. Several people came up to hug me, sharing their own stories of difficult family members and boundary violations. It was like the confrontation had given everyone permission to acknowledge their own painful family dynamics. One woman I barely knew came up with tears in her eyes. My sister expected me to pay her mortgage because I made more money than she did. I did it for 3 years before my husband finally put his foot down. I wish I'd had the courage to do what you did. Ethan's college friend Marcus came over and said something to him that I overheard. Man, I've never seen you go to war like that. That was intense. That's my wife, Ethan said immediately. Nobody treats her like that. Not even her own family. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, needing a moment alone to process everything that had just happened. Maya followed me without asking. Are you okay? She asked as I gripped the bathroom sink, trying to steady my shaking hands. I just publicly humiliated my mother at my own wedding, I said, staring at my reflection in the mirror. No, Maya said firmly, handing me tissues. You publicly defended yourself at your own wedding. There's a huge difference. I've watched your mom treat you like you were less important than Vanessa for over 10 years. You needed to do this. Then why does it feel so awful? I whispered. Because you're a good person who was raised to believe that standing up for yourself is selfish, Maya said, starting to fix my ruined makeup with gentle hands. But you're not selfish, Alexis. You're finally putting yourself first for once in your life, and that scares you because it's completely new. When we returned to the reception, Ethan's grandmother asked to make a toast. She was 93 years old, sharp as a tack, and known for speaking her mind. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice surprisingly strong for her age. I've been to hundreds of weddings in my very long life. Society weddings, intimate ceremonies, elopements, everything in between. But this is the first wedding where I've watched a young woman stand up for herself with such grace and courage. The tent was completely silent, everyone hanging on her words. When I married my husband 70 years ago, women were expected to be quiet and accommodating no matter how poorly family treated us. We were taught that keeping the peace was more important than protecting ourselves. I spent 30 years of my marriage catering to my mother-in-law's every demand before I finally learned to say no. She looked directly at me. Alexis, you learned that lesson much younger than I did. You stood here today and drew boundaries that should have been allowed years ago. Your mother will either learn from this or she won't. But either way, you're going to be just fine. You have steel in your spine, young lady. Never forget to use it. The applause was deafening. I was crying again, but this time from gratitude instead of pain. Around 10 o'clock, when the reception was starting to wind down, my Uncle Peter approached me. He was my dad's brother and had always been kind but somewhat distant since Dad died. Alexis, I need to talk to you, he said, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying. I need to apologize. Uncle Peter, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted gently. Your father would have been so proud of what you did today. And he would have been ashamed of me for not doing more to help you over the years. He took a shaky breath. After your dad died, I should have stepped up. I should have noticed how your mother was treating you and Vanessa differently. I should have said something, done something. Instead, I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause family problems. Tears were rolling down his cheeks now. Your dad loved you so much, Alexis. Before he died, he was so worried about what would happen to you. He knew your mother favored Vanessa. He and your mom fought about it constantly. He wanted her to treat you both equally, but she always had some excuse for why Vanessa needed more attention, more money, more support. Hearing about my father shattered something in my chest. He'd been gone for 10 years, but I still missed him every single day. Dad knew. I whispered. Of course he knew. He saw it clearly. And after he died, it got even worse. I promised him I'd look out for you, and I failed. I'm so sorry, Alexis. I hugged him tightly, both of us crying. You're here now. That matters. Ethan is a good man, Uncle Peter said, pulling back to look at me. Your father would have loved him, especially after what he did tonight. Having someone who will stand up for you like that, that's worth more than anything. Later that night, Ethan and I finally made it back to our hotel suite. We were both emotionally exhausted, but also somehow relieved. Do you regret how it happened? Ethan asked as we sat on the couch, still in our wedding attire. I thought about it honestly. I regret that it had to happen at all. I wish I had a mother who could just be happy for me without trying to take things away. But do I regret standing up for myself?
No.
Not at all. Ethan pulled me closer. When my mom called me this morning and told me what your mother had said, I knew we couldn't handle this quietly. Because your mom was counting on you handling it quietly. She was counting on you being too polite, too afraid of making a scene, too conditioned to keep the peace. But why did it have to be so public? I asked. Because that's the only way to break the pattern, he said simply. Your mother has spent your entire life manipulating you in private, guilting you behind closed doors, making you feel like you're the problem. It needed to be exposed publicly so she couldn't spin it or make you doubt yourself later. He was right. If we'd handled it privately, Mom would have found a way to twist it, to make me feel guilty, to make me question whether I'd overreacted. We ordered room service at 2 in the morning, chocolate cake and champagne. We sat in bed eating and talking about everything that had happened. Your cousin Jessica speaking up like that was incredible, Ethan said. I had no idea Mom had tried to make her postpone her wedding, I admitted. But it's so typical. Everything has to revolve around Vanessa's feelings. Not anymore, Ethan said firmly. Those days are over. We left for Bora Bora the next afternoon. Ethan had booked us a private overwater bungalow at this incredible resort. For the first few days, we just focused on being newlyweds. Swimming, snorkeling, reading on our private deck, making love to the sound of the ocean beneath us. On the 4th day, I made the mistake of checking my phone. The video of the confrontation had gone viral. Someone at the wedding had recorded the entire thing and posted it online. Within 3 days, it had over 2 million views. I felt panic rising. Ethan, everyone has seen this. Everyone. But as I scrolled through the comments, I realized something surprising. The overwhelming majority of responses were supportive. This bride is my absolute hero. I've been the scapegoat child my whole life. This made me cry. Finally, someone's standing up. That groom defending his wife like that? That's real love. The mother is completely toxic. Good for this bride for setting boundaries. There were some negative comments calling me spoiled or ungrateful, but they were drowned out by thousands of supportive messages from people who understood exactly what they were witnessing. Maya texted me, "Riley, you need to see this. The video has gone completely viral, but everyone is on your side. People get it." Then I saw that Vanessa had posted a series of Instagram stories. The first was some vague quote about fake people who forget where they came from. The second was a photo of a beat-up Honda Civic with the caption, "When you have to adult on your own because family abandons you." The third was a shared post about family alienation, covered in crying emojis. Ethan gently took my phone and tossed it onto the couch. "Nope. We're on our honeymoon. Her victim routine doesn't get to come with us." "But she's making me look like the bad guy," I protested. "To who?" Ethan asked. "Her 300 Instagram followers? Alexis, 2 million people just watched what actually happened. The truth is out there. Let Vanessa spin whatever story she wants. The people who matter know what really happened." He was right. I needed to let it go and focus on us, on our marriage, on starting our life together. When we got back from our honeymoon 2 weeks later, Patricia called and asked me to come to lunch. Just the two of us. We met at this beautiful cafe downtown, and after we ordered, Patricia got straight to the point. "I want to talk to you about what your mother said when she called me." I braced myself, not sure if I wanted to hear this. "She told me you'd always been materialistic and selfish with possessions. She said you'd struggled with sharing throughout your childhood. She said Vanessa had always been the generous one who thought of others first." Patricia's voice was calm, but I could hear the anger underneath. Each word felt like a knife. My own mother had slandered me to my new mother-in-law. She suggested that as your new mother-in-law, I could help teach you to be more family-oriented. She framed giving the Mercedes to Vanessa as an opportunity for you to learn about sacrifice and generosity. My hands were shaking. "She really said that?" "She said exactly that," Patricia confirmed. "She also implied that you'd married Ethan primarily for his money, and that we needed to make sure you understood that wealth came with obligations to your entire family." I felt sick to my stomach. Richard, who had joined us, spoke up. When Patricia told me about the phone call, I had our attorney do some checking. We wanted to know who Ethan was marrying, what your relationship with your family was really like. "You did a background check on me?" I asked, though I wasn't really angry. I understood why they'd want to protect their son. "We found the scholarship fund you'd been quietly funding," Patricia said gently. "We found records showing you'd been paying part of your mother's mortgage for the past 2 years without telling anyone. We found that you'd loaned Vanessa $7,500 that was never repaid. We found dozens of money transfers to your mother and sister going back years." I'd forgotten about most of those. They were just things I'd done to help, to keep the peace, to be a good daughter and sister. When I saw all of that, Patricia continued, "And then your mother had the audacity to call me and lecture me about teaching you generosity." I was furious. That's when Ethan and I decided the confrontation needed to happen publicly. Because your mother needed to be exposed for what she'd been doing to you. 6 months after the wedding, I was settling into a new normal. Ethan and I had moved into a beautiful house we'd picked out together. My work at the legal clinic was going well, and I'd even gotten promoted. The viral video had eventually faded from the internet, though people still occasionally recognized me. Mom had tried reaching out multiple times. Cards, letters, voicemails. Each attempt followed the same pattern, first claiming I'd overreacted, then trying to guilt me, then playing the victim. I didn't respond to any of it. Vanessa had gone completely quiet after the backlash from her Instagram posts. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd lost her job at the boutique and was struggling to find new work. Then one day, I received a handwritten letter from Vanessa. Not a text or email, but an actual letter delivered to our house. The letter was 8 pages long. She apologized without excuses or justifications. She talked about starting therapy and beginning to understand how Mom's favoritism had damaged both of us in different ways. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness or even a relationship, just wanted me to know she was working on herself. I showed the letter to Ethan. "What do you think?" "I think it's a start," he said carefully. "But words are easy. If she's serious about changing, you'll see it in her actions over time, not in one letter." I put the letter in a drawer and focused on my own life. Maybe someday I'd be ready to talk to Vanessa, but that day wasn't today. A year after our wedding, Ethan and I returned to the Hayes estate for our anniversary. We stood in the same garden where we'd gotten married, and Ethan pulled me close. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about it honestly. I regret that I had to have that kind of confrontation on what should have been the happiest day of my life. I wish I'd had a mother who could love both her daughters equally. But do I regret standing up for myself? Never. Not for a single second. The Mercedes that had caused all the drama had been donated to a women's shelter within days of the wedding. They sold it and used the funds to support their programs. Patricia and Richard had bought me a new one, silver this time, with every possible upgrade. The title had both our names with legal documentation that it couldn't be transferred without both signatures. "That's probably overkill," I told Patricia when she showed me the paperwork. She'd smiled. "Maybe. But it makes me feel better." I'd increased my scholarship fund donation to $1,500 a month. Every year, I got letters from students who'd received the scholarship telling me how it had changed their lives. Those letters meant more to me than any car ever could. My relationship with Uncle Peter had grown stronger. He called regularly and we'd meet for dinner once a month. He told me stories about my dad that I'd never heard before, slowly helping me piece together the man I'd lost too young. Ethan and I started talking about having children, and I made him promise something. If we have more than one kid, we will never, ever play favorites. We will never make one child feel less important than the other. "That's literally the easiest promise I'll ever make," he said, pulling me close. I'd started therapy too, working through years of feeling like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't deserve nice things, like asking for what I needed was selfish. It was hard work, but I was making progress. Patricia became the mother figure I'd always needed. She called regularly, not to interrogate or judge, but just to check in. She celebrated my successes without trying to diminish them. She supported me without asking for anything in return. Lauren and I had become incredibly close. We had lunch every week, and she'd become one of my best friends. She told me once, "When Ethan first brought you home, I was so happy because I could tell you were genuine. You weren't dating him for his money or his family's connections. You just loved him. And watching him defend you at the wedding? I've never been prouder to be his sister." About 18 months after the wedding, Mom showed up at my office unannounced. Reception called me, and my stomach dropped when they said she was in the lobby. I called Ethan immediately. "My mom is here. Do you want me to come down there?" he asked right away. "No, but stay on the phone. I'm going to talk to her." I walked down to the lobby, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Mom sat in one of the leather chairs, clutching her purse, looking smaller and older than I remembered. "Alexis, thank God," she said, standing up quickly. "I've been trying to reach you for months." "I know. I've been ignoring you on purpose." I kept my voice professional, aware we were in public. "Can we please go somewhere private?" she asked, looking around at the other people in the lobby. "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." She looked uncomfortable. "Alexis, please. This is embarrassing." "You know what was embarrassing?" I said quietly. "Having you try to steal my wedding gift in front of 180 guests. So excuse me if I'm not particularly concerned about your comfort right now." She flinched. Then her face shifted into manipulation mode. "Vanessa lost her job again. She can barely afford the payments on that used car she had to buy. If you would just help her out." "No," I said simply. "She's your sister. Family helps family. Family respects family," I countered. You and Vanessa have never respected me. You've used me, manipulated me, and taken advantage of me my entire life. That stops now. I made mistakes, Mom said, and I could see tears forming. But you're cutting off your entire family over one argument. It wasn't one argument. It was 28 years of being treated like I mattered less than Vanessa. 28 years of being expected to sacrifice everything while she got handed everything. You don't get to minimize that. I turned to walk away, then stopped. If you truly want to repair this relationship someday, you need to start by acknowledging what you did wrong. Not making excuses. Not blaming me. Actually taking responsibility. Until you can do that, we have nothing to talk about. I walked back to my office without looking back. 2 years after the wedding, I was finally at peace. I'd stopped waiting for Mom to apologize or change. I'd accepted that some people are incapable of seeing their own toxicity, and that wasn't my problem to fix. Vanessa sent me a card on my birthday with a simple message. I'm still working on myself. I hope you're happy. Love, V. I appreciated it, but I wasn't ready to rebuild that relationship yet. Maybe someday. The viral video had actually led to something positive. I started getting messages from people who'd gone through similar situations. Some were looking for advice, some just wanted to share their stories. I realized how common this pattern was: the golden child and the scapegoat, the family member who's expected to give while others are allowed to take. Ethan and I were talking seriously about starting a family. The idea both excited and terrified me. I was scared I'd somehow repeat the patterns I grew up with, even though I knew intellectually that I wouldn't. You're nothing like your mother, Ethan told me one night when I voiced these fears. You're self-aware, you're in therapy, and you know exactly what damage favoritism can do. Our kids are going to be so lucky to have you as their mom. The story of the Mercedes had taken on a life of its own in our social circle. People still brought it up at parties, though always with sympathy now. Remember when Alexis's mother tried to take her wedding gift? They'd say, then share their own stories of difficult family members. Maya still had the videos saved, and sometimes when I was having a hard day or doubting myself, she'd make me watch it. To remind you that you're not crazy, she'd say. To remind you of how strong you are. The new Mercedes sat in our garage, a symbol not of wealth, but of being valued. Every time I drove it, I thought about how far I'd come. From the girl who thought she didn't deserve nice things to the woman who could set boundaries and protect herself. Patricia had told me something that stuck with me. The car was never really about the car. It was about whether you'd finally stand up for yourself or continue letting them walk all over you. I'm glad you chose yourself. Looking back now, I've learned so much from that experience. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. I learned that some people will always see your boundaries as punishment rather than protection. I learned that going no contact with toxic family members isn't cruel, it's self-preservation. I learned that love shouldn't cost you everything. That real family supports you without demanding you shrink yourself. That the people who truly care about you will celebrate your success, not try to redistribute it. I learned that public confrontations aren't always bad. Sometimes patterns need to be exposed to be broken. Sometimes the only way to stop the cycle is to refuse to participate in it anymore, no matter who's watching. Most importantly, I learned that I deserved better than how I'd been treated. That realization changed everything. So that's my story. That's what happened when my mother tried to take my Mercedes for my sister on my wedding day, and my husband exposed her in front of everyone. Do I miss my mom? The honest answer is complicated. I miss the mom I wish I'd had. The one who would have been proud of me, who would have loved both her daughters equally, who would have celebrated my wedding day instead of trying to ruin it. But that mom never existed. The mom I actually had? The one who played favorites and manipulated me and tried to steal my wedding gift? No. I don't miss her at all. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're the forgotten child, the scapegoat, the one who's always expected to sacrifice while others take, please hear me. You deserve better. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to have boundaries that protect you. Standing up to my mother on my wedding day was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it was also necessary. Because for the first time in my life, I chose myself. I chose my happiness over keeping the peace. I chose my future over my past. The sky didn't fall. Yes, I lost my relationship with my mother and sister. But what I gained was invaluable. Self-respect. A husband who will defend me. In-laws who treat me like family. The freedom to live without constantly walking on eggshells. Some people think I'm harsh for cutting off my mother over a car. But they don't understand it was never about the car. The car was just the final straw in a lifetime of being treated as less important, less deserving, less worthy of love and respect. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. You are not responsible for managing other people's feelings at the expense of your own well-being. You are not required to sacrifice yourself to keep others comfortable. And you are absolutely not obligated to maintain relationships with people who don't respect you, even if they're family. My wedding day didn't go the way I planned. But in the end, it was exactly what I needed. It forced me to finally stand up for myself, to draw clear boundaries, and to start my marriage with complete honesty and mutual respect. The Mercedes was just a car, but what it represented was everything. It represented being valued, being welcomed, being treated like I mattered. And when my mother tried to take that away, she crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Thank you for listening to my story.